Hey, John.
There he is. What's up?
How are you?
I love how you just send over the three cars or like literally a few minutes before just so you can railroad.
Yeah, well, you have to have the element of surprise. I like seeing people scramble a little bit when they first get on the call. So we're waiting for our my buddy Lars to join. Quick review of what we do here is we just sort of dissect what we saw. We think, good, bad, or indifferent. We got
Yeah.
30 minutes, and when there's big weeks, it's obviously more exciting. Like last week, we talked about that Mark II GTI that sold for $87,000.
Oh yeah.
So there was a lot of chatter about that, and that car has continued to sort of stoke the flames a bit. There was a big
You
article
think?
this, yeah, well, the big article this week that came out said they suspected money laundering is, but that's one crowd. The other crowd says,
It wouldn't surprise me considering like there's so much money laundering going around in the car business. Period.
"Do you think so?
Yeah, I mean, it's happened with a bunch of dealer groups.
Really?"
Yeah, the dealer group that the dealership my dad worked for. Yeah, like there was like a connection to like Russian mob money laundering. And I
So it's
think Dan O'Brien and I think Dan O'Brien chain had the same thing.
so it's interesting you say that because right now there's if you read any of the comments on some of these articles, it's like if someone mentions money laundering, there's automatically somebody else who's like, "Oh, you just don't know what it's like for people who have money."
Yeah,
And
yeah.
and and it's interesting because like you can tell there's sorry, we're doing some last minute changes to the list here, so it's going to be even more of a surprise. But
Oh, great. Oh, I kind of actually you should just give it to me like as we go,
well, that
just
might be
as
that
a
might be happening. So,
whatever. You know
but to
me.
finish the thought, like yeah, it's kind of like anything else right now when there's paranoia about something,
Yeah,
like the person that says what's happening, that there's like automatically five people who shout it down. So it's to hear you say that there's a dealer group you knew of that actually did that proves that
yeah,
it does happen because there's people out there right now saying, "Oh no, there's no money laundering in the car hobby." So,
yeah.
um,
No, it was like it was with the dealer group, and it like the guy who was connected, like he's like not allowed in the U.S. and everything.
wow. Hey Lars, thanks for jumping on. My buddy John joined us tonight, and John, Lars, and
How you doing, John?
we were
How's it
just
going?
saying that for all the chatter about that GTI and people saying, "Oh, it's money laundering," and then people saying it's not money laundering, Graham was just saying there actually was a dealer group in Massachusetts where money laundering
They're
was
actually
actually
like
happening.
bigger than they were like it was they owned like dealerships across the country.
Oh, what people were just kind of questioning the validity of that sale and the number it went for, pretty much.
Well, and then when someone said money laundering, there's like five people piling on saying, "Oh, you just don't know what it's like for people who have money." And John is just basically saying, "Well, maybe, but there's also evidence of dealer groups doing exactly what people were saying was happening in that
Yep,
auction."
yep. I mean, you've
Yeah,
definitely seen some sketchy stuff before on Bring a Trailer, especially with some of those false sales we talked about early on. So, you can't put anything past people these days, really.
No, I agree. I think it's that one still bothers me. It's just too random, and the bidding activity made no sense. There was no reason for it to go that high in terms of
Hmm.
where it was settling in at.
yeah.
Um, so Lars, I
Do
explained
you also
to
think it's do you also
oh
think it's a bit of like ridiculousness of people have more money than sense scenario?
well, I do. I mean, it's part of me that hates to acknowledge this that part because there is part of me that does believe that for a surprisingly large part of this population, there are people for whom that amount of money is meaningless. And
Hmm.
I may have been living in under a rock because I just didn't want to believe that that was really that there were that many people
Yeah,
who were
right.
raking in that kind of cash. And but there is part of me that does realize that if you work in the financial sector, that 80 grand really is not a whole lot to spend on a car. But the thing that bothers me
Yeah,
about that is I feel like people who really do have the means and have had that means for a long time don't make purchases like that when they know they can get it elsewhere for far less. But that's a whole new thing that's kind of about it with the online auctions is we're getting everyone's buying behaviors put on front and center and showing that for some people it may not require logic or discretion because you'll make that money back in a day.
Agreed.
So with that said, Lars texted me while we were kind of landing the plane here, and I think he's got a great idea that we saw some big news this week regarding Doug Demuro, who bought his dream car after his auction platform received a sizable investment. And it's funny, both he and one of his top deputies went out and bought new cars in the past few days. And Demuro obviously went big time and bought a Carrera GT. So Lars has something up his sleeve that I'm excited to see. But we trade off each week, John, in terms of who does the finds. And so Lars, are you gonna drop a bomb on us in terms of what you dug up? Are you doing all three or one, or what do we got?
So we can switch off. I had put together a little list just kind of matching the theme of what he got.
Go for
just
it.
like those supercars of the 2000s.
Yep.
Some of my personal favorites, honestly, the best mix of analog and modern vehicles.
Yeah.
So I did a Carrera GT. There was a Murcielago SV on there, and then I also did a Ford GT. I was trying to find an Enzo, right, to fit in that 2004, 2005 timeframe. Could not find a single listing for one for sale, and I couldn't even find one on Bring a Trailer. So that was a little tough. I threw the Lamborghini in there, but yeah, I think it could be a fun one.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Did you send them over? Or can they be in the chat or?
Oh, I sent them over via email, but I can
hold on. I got them
in the chat. You got them?
Yep.
Yeah, forward to me.
I'll throw them.
I'm gonna pull up on the screen, John. We can all follow.
Sounds good.
Perfect. All right. And then John, I'll also throw it in the chat too, just so you can kind of scroll around.
Yeah, I can. Yeah, cool.
All right. So first one up, 2005 Ford GT, 1,800 original miles, sold for 405,000, which is a fantastic number for one of these, but also not. I would say not entirely surprising. Now, this is a car Demuro talks about a lot. He said in his video this week, he is not going to sell the one he has or otherwise stop using it. In fact, he said he's going to use it more because with the Carrera GT in there, that's obviously a car he's not going to use every day. The Ford GT that he's actually done a pretty admirable job of using more than most owners do. I think he said he has 40,000 miles on his. And honestly, one of the most brilliant things about that purchase was he bought it at a time where they just started, that they had kind of that lull, right, where they were new. There was modest depreciation, and then they just took off. And he bought his right in between that inflection point. So I think this number, and I'm not really phased by it. I feel like the follow up to this car, the newer Ford GT, has been a little bit of a disappointment. It has not been as well received as the first reincarnation of this classic supercar. So I honestly think in 2 years this price will look affordable, especially if the mileage doesn't change. What do you guys think?
Totally agree with you there, Jeff. I mean, this car kind of came out of nowhere. People didn't think they were going to do, a second generation of the GT40 from the 60s and 70s. I've always loved this thing. Girl I went to school with, I think it was her uncle or something, had one of these, and straight piped it the whole bit. And I remember he would roll down my neighborhood in this thing, and it was just absolutely so loud, such a screamer, such a crazy shape. Guy brought one in actually at the Ford dealership I work at. He was getting it serviced or something. And just to see it in person, I mean, everyone, whether they're an enthusiast or not, just cranks their heads and looks at this thing. 44 inches tall. So if you're standing up, it's like right at your butt. The roof line is at your butt. It's just a crazy vehicle. And it's kind of, to shorten it up, I think what it shows, I mean, Ford, ultimately, it's an economy car producer. They make cars for the general public. But when they try and they get the performance team involved, they have a track record of making some pretty phenomenal vehicles, and I don't think this one is any exception. What about you, John?
I think this is a good price for sure. I really love this. I love how it stayed true to the original Ford GT. I'm not crazy about the newer one. It looks a little wonky, especially from the side and the rear profile, but it's great looking car. I love kind of the Shelby scheme with this car as well. I mean, it's going to hold its value. And also Ford was great around this time. They had some real home runs with their design and kind of the not complete throwbacks, but real kind of tribute to, some of the great designs they had. If you remember their concept cars from this time, some of their designs are really great. So overall solid.
Yeah, that's a good point about the timing. That this was a point at which Ford really, really across the lineup, from the basic entry models to the trucks to obviously the Mustang and this car, they were doing well, and I think they were outpacing GM a little bit in terms of just producing an overall lineup that was very appealing. So yeah, this is a great result, great car. So let's jump down to the next one. This is obviously the car of the hour as it relates to Mr. Demuro. So 2005 Carrera GT, just a little under 1.3 million. And this car has, I think this is almost identical, Lars, to the one that Demuro bought. This may even be, I wonder if this is, no, it's got 14,000 miles. So different car, but the color scheme is identical. Now, I will say I struggle a bit with the Carrera GT. I don't have quite the same visceral reaction that Demuro had to it. It's never been one of my favorites. And if I had a money no object Porsche purchase, I already know what I'd buy, which would be a 993 chassis GT2. That's just that's the one for me. And this car, I understand why it's almost like it's less about the car itself, more the fact that it was the last. I forget the terminology Demuro used, but he couched it as being sort of the last analog supercar that Porsche would effectively build. So I think that's the appeal more than anything, because aesthetically, visually, it's far from my favorite Porsche product, and I find when Demuro showed one of the invoices for the last service performed, and it was over 50,000. It's like 50,000 and change. Like that to me is my enjoyment changes dramatically when I'm thinking that's what a car with 9,000 miles on it requires. But in terms of a blue chip, it will never be worth any less. I mean, this photo right here, I mean, that is a pretty incredible stance. And it has, the bizarre celebrity connection to Paul Walker in terms of how he, unfortunately passed away. I mean, it's a car that already has been baked into our culture and history as it relates to iconic automobiles. So I mean, it does have a lot of interesting boxes checked already, but I'm more curious why everyone is or why so many people seem to be in love with this car, because it never hit that for me. But from a price standpoint, I don't again, it's like the GT, it's never going to go down.
Yeah, I mean, hearing you talk about it, honestly, Jeff, it is a little nuts. I mean, seven figures, I get it. These are starting to be, more like seven figures plus another 500,000. So they're really getting up there in price. I really think it comes down to the fact that it's like almost like every decade they come out with cars that like for example, in the past, decade for us, it's been like the LaFerrari, the 918, the P1. This today's episode is kind of more around like the Ford GT, the Carrera GT, the Murcielago, the Enzo. This is a vehicle that Porsche, I feel like, really kind of took a step off the deep end with, and they kind of went out of their comfort zone. You guys obviously know what the standard, Porsche sports car looks like, and this is not it. It is just a really crazy car with the, V10 from the Formula One block, basically a race car for the road. And I think it's something in terms of sound, the way it looks, and just the overall construction. You're just never going to see anything like it ever again. 1,200 units, 600 horsepower from an NAV 10, 15, 20 years ago at this point. I think like the Ford GT and the other cars in this, it's going to hold its value extremely well. But with those $20,000 or $30,000 clutch jobs and things like that, I also see why it's kind of like, a little bit unreasonable of a vehicle.
It's a mythical car when you really think about it. There's, it was known for kind of being a bit scary handling. When you read the reports about guys like Walter Roll having, saying it's a handful, a guy with an amazing car control like that, it's something big. And it is an analog car. I mean, you just showed that photo of the gear stick. I mean, that's one of the classic, that wooden knob to it is really, I mean, when are we ever going to see that again? In a world of paddle shifters and, all different types of, weird, bizarre types of transmissions, and going off what you guys are saying, it's a race car. If you remember the backstory of this car, it's really based off of the stillborn LMP 2000, race car. So it is a race car for the street. And it's going to hold its value. There's that mythical aspect to it. I mean, we just saw the Ford GT. I mean, I'm sure we've all seen a Ford GT on the street. We've all passed it. Think about, when was the last time you saw a Carrera GT go past you on the road? They're rare. There's that legacy about them. It is that last analog car. It's that here we are going to more technology, and here's kind of our last big shebang before we get to, what was the 918 was the car after that?
Correct.
Trying to remember. Yeah. I mean, look what the 918 was. It was more high tech, more state of the art. This is kind of pure raw race car.
Yeah. It's interesting. There's a guy in town who has one of the Taycons, which I think is like a 4-door style electric.
Yeah.
And I mean, that thing, I will admit, when it goes by, I mean, whatever sound they've dubbed into it it's like, you hear it like, well, that's exactly what I would expect a high performance electric car to sound like, even though I know it's fake.
Yeah.
Like, I give Porsche so much credit because they just figure this stuff out before anyone else does. So in that sense, yeah, it's kind of like they could have made this thing look like the Oscar Mayer Wienermobile, and it would have been like an absolute hit because of everything you guys had just said, which is it was like every box for an iconic Porsche was checked. Is highly analog, extremely limited units, race car DNA. I mean, and really they say that about every Porsche they make, but this literally was a race car. And I mean, I was looking at the photos. I forgot about like how much carbon fiber is in this thing. Like it's just nuts. So as much as it has kind of this sedate appearance and something, like it's not. And Demuro's right. Like it doesn't really. He said like people don't really notice it in traffic, and I would believe that. It's not that I wouldn't know what it was.
Yeah, it looks like almost at times like an inflated boxer.
Exactly. So I think that's always
nailed
been
it with that one. Nailed it with that one.
That's what's always sort of killed my excitement over, but in a weird way, it almost makes it cooler. It's because it's like just below the radar, and yeah, again, it doesn't quite grab me like it does other people, but I understand every reason why. There's never going to be a bad price on one of these because someone's always going to be willing to pay more for it. And going back to what we talked about last week with that Mark II GTI, like this is where I get you saying, I don't care what the rules say. If I have to spend $5 million to get it, I'll do it. That I understand. Like if you're in that ballpark of means, that's the car. Then you're like, yeah, fine. Who cares? I don't buy that argument talking about a Mark II GTI, but that's for another time. So thank you for digging this up, Lars. This was a great and very pertinent find.
A pretty recent sale too. Definitely.
Yeah, I actually
think that was early December or late December.
Yeah, I didn't even see this one come through. So
no, I didn't.
Good catch. All right. Down to 9 minutes. Power round.
We'll power through this one. 2 minutes apiece.
All right. 20,000 kilometer Lamborghini Murcielago LP 674 SuperVeloce. See, I just hate Lamborghinis now because the freaking names are so long to tell us why this thing is special. But in any case, so I will fully admit I'm a little bit outside my element with these. It's been hard. I kind of lost my attention shifted after the Diablo in some ways. Like that was kind of the last SV branded Lamborghini that I paid paid close attention to. But let's talk about this. So this car, Lars, this is still what is this transmission wise? So it's an e-gear. Okay.
I think it's the e-gear one.
Yeah, so
So
it's a single clutch. I couldn't find a manual one, but they do exist. There's a few of these late model SVs with a stick. And
okay.
I want you just to kind of in your head pretend that's what this is, because it's not
Yeah.
supposed to be an e-gear. But they do exist in a manual from the factory.
So I
They're
look
more
at this.
popular in the e-gear though, for sure.
Yeah, I couldn't find one, man. I couldn't find one.
Because everyone buys them.
I have not really enjoyed these since I felt like they were just designed by a guy with a like CAD like AutoCAD software or something. Like it just has never spoken to me like he does. And so I'm gonna be quick on this one. I mean, I see the price of 865, and I guess I just don't like it's the one car, it's the one supercar where I don't really understand the principles behind it now, because like the Ferraris, I can still get why people are paying very strong money for those, because there's still I still feel the heritage factor baked into it. Like I still think you're getting a little bit of Enzo Ferrari in that purchase, even though the cars have changed dramatically. My problem with the Lamborghinis is I don't understand the company's identity anymore. Like I get it, it's fast, it's an incredible track car. I know there are numerous racing teams, professional grade racing teams, that just buy these straight from the factory because they are so capable. But the soul of I mean, I hate talking about soul, but I mean that's kind of the only word that applies here. I don't know what this car has anymore. I don't know what Lamborghini offers in that category at the moment, because I don't feel like anything really, like I said, going back to that Taycan, that Porsche Taycan, like I see that and I'm like, okay, I get this is the future. I don't love it, but it's still a Porsche. Like I still hear that thing, and like I said, I'm amazed they figured out how to make an electric car sound like a Porsche. They did it. I don't understand the Lamborghinis right now in terms of why or what they are, what their identity is. It's fast, it's incredible, it's an incredible track weapon, blah blah blah. But what else is it? So I see this price, and I'm just curious what's driving someone to buy it, because I don't think you're paying that money for the spiritual anecdote. It has to be just. I'm guessing it's checking boxes performance wise no other car can check. But I'll be honest and say I don't get it.
Yeah, I can kind of see that. And out of the three, I really never really resonated with Lamborghinis as much. This one in particular, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, John, I believe the SVs were rear drive. Get them with a stick. This was the last
Yeah.
of the Murcielago generation. So they finished production in 2010 before coming out with the Aventador. Lighter than the normal one, and these things are just absolute screamers. I think it's a 6.5, yeah,
Yeah.
6.5 V12, making them over 600 horsepower. Just again, one of those cars where you're not really gonna see something that they make today that's gonna sound or look like this. I have seen some of the SVs in person. The road presence is just unbelievable. When those flares kick up in the rear arches to suck in more air, it is just really cool car. But to make this quick, I know we're running short on time here. Yeah, Jeff, I agree with the fact that today it's like, they're kind of clinging on to that last, we have the V12 Aventador. They're clinging on to that. And once they lose the ability to make cars like so, I think the brand is going to kind of be in maybe some trouble. We'll see what the future holds, though.
Robo.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with you guys in that. It looks like a really cheesy influencer's car. It doesn't have that, like old school enemies like Countach and Diablos, and they have that really cool factor. This has that almost kind of cheesy factor to me. And Jeffrey, what you were talking about, like, what's the DNA of Lamborghini? Where are you going? They're part of the Volkswagen group. We all know that they share platforms and whatnot, especially with the newer cars. And it's like you're just paying like almost for a jazzed up, Audi or something like that at times. I really wonder. I really wonder where Lamborghini is going to go. And as you guys are talking, like, they still have the V12 and everything like that, but there's more to it. There's got to be more to it. It doesn't do it for me. It really doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, I did see this. I flagged this comment here, which is the V12 that was does have heritage. Obviously, that's probably a driver for some people that who understand what we're saying, that this is the closest thing you can get these days to what the company used to be. And it's interesting, Matt Farah from the Smoking Tire, he bought a Countach recently,
Mm-hmm.
and like, again, not necessarily my, first, it's not a dream car of mine, but I love the spec he bought, which was a non-anniversary car with
Mm.
the spoiler and the gold wheel, the red on gold is just a killer combination. And he said it doesn't matter where you go, there's a line of people out the door who want to see that car. And but the people who want to see that car, I think, are the ones who know some of Lamborghini's history. I think the people who want to see this car are, to your point, John, an influencer or someone who just wants to
Someone's doing it for the gram, whereas
right.
the two other cars we looked at, you're getting the hardcore enthusiast.
Exactly.
That's going to be drooling over it. People like us.
Exactly right. Exactly right. So, Lars, this was a great list. Thanks for pulling this together. And it really is interesting to think about, sort of the last of the analog supercars, the last cars with, except for the Lamborghini, a conventional manual transmission and absolutely bonkers engineering behind them. And I would not be surprised. I don't think the GT will ever be eclipsing the Carrera GT, but I think it's going to get closer in time. I think it's going to keep, it's definitely not done growing value wise at the moment. So Demuro looks very smart for holding on to his, but he seems to do a lot of things right. So kudos to him. A big week for Cars and Bids, and certainly he's been getting a lot of praise online about following his dream, getting all the way to the end. So it's a pretty cool story. And while there's about 16 other cars I'd buy for whatever he paid for one Carrera GT, it's still a great result for him.
Agreed.
Well, we're good, and I don't want to have this end awkwardly with us talking halfway through the video cutting off. So, Grobo, thank you for
Why
joining
not?
us.
It's always fun that way.
Well, that's why this was a subterfuge. We brought you in so you can start editing.
If I wish I have a pro Zoom account, I would have. Wish you told me.
Well, Lars and I are not territorial, so maybe we'll do this more than once a month.
Well, if you ever need a pro Zoom account, you know where to find me, my man.
There we go. Well, John, thanks for joining. Lars, thanks for pulling together an awesome list, and we'll see you guys next week.
Take care, guys.
All right.
Later, guys.
Good night.
Bye.